Hi, welcome back to Theological Thoughts. Today's question is about the early Christian church and its morality in contrast to Roman society. So it says, was the early Christian church's treatment of the poor, the sick, the disabled, orphans and widows more humane than the treatment they would have received from the pagan members of Roman society? Did Christianity change things for the worse or for the better? Which is a very interesting question, and I think a lot of people, or people who oppose Christianity today, would say that it didn't make it better, but I don't think history is on their side with that when we look at the facts and see the great benefit that Christianity did have on Roman society and later the world at large. There was a Roman emperor known as Julian the Apostate, who wrote a letter around 360, and he saw the charitable work that Christians did and really hated it because he saw how it helped boost the church and the Christian religion because they did good things for all people, not just their own. So he had a bright idea one day to try and emulate the church's response to the poor and needy and enforced it upon his pagan priests to make them do the same, because he thought, well, if they copy the Christians and are charitable and everything to all the people around them, then it will boost the people going to the temples. But the sort of problem with that was that the pagan priests didn't really have that core doctrine of selflessness in the same way that the Christian church preached. And it sort of comes from the Judeo-Christian mindset, really. The long history of helping the poor, the orphans, the widows reaches right back into the Old Testament and continues in the church in the New Testament age. So in the pagan religions, while they may have looked after their own people, they didn't really have this thing of going out of their way for other nations. So Julian writes a letter to the high priest of Galatia. It's called Letter 22, no fancy name for it, where he imposes good works on the pagan priests, or else they'll lose their position, and that with their aim to mimic the Christians to enhance the pagan religion by the same methods that appear to be growing the church. And to quote the letter, he says, "Why then do we think that this is enough? Why do we not observe that it is their benevolence to strangers, their care for the graves of the dead, and the pretended holiness of their lives that have done most to increase atheism," Christianity in this case? "I believe that we ought really and truly to practice every one of these virtues, and it is not enough for you alone to practice them, but so must all priests in Galatia without exception. Either shame or persuade them into righteousness, or else remove them from their priestly office. In every city establish frequent hostels in order that strangers may profit by our benevolence. I do not mean for our own people only, but for others also who are in need of money. For it is disgraceful that, when no Jew ever has to beg, and the impious Galileans, meaning Christians, support not only their own poor, but ours as well, all men see that our people lack aid from us." So, it's sort of a political move as well. It was a way for the emperor to show that they care for their people, and not just their own people, but all people, to show that the emperor is good and loving and benevolent, when really they only wanted to care for their own people that they deemed worthy of it as well. Julian also tries to make it seem that this benevolent outlook was an ancient practice of theirs, rather than something new he's just sort of imposing, by quoting Homer as proof to tell the people in the villages, which he says, "and accustom those who loved the Hellenic religion to these good works by teaching them that this was our practice of old." So he's sort of trying to say, look, we've always believed this since the time of Homer, which was, I can't remember the date, but probably a couple of centuries before this time. And I find it interesting that he says to tell the people in the villages this, so those of less education who are probably a bit more susceptible to just taking the word of the emperor. So it's just like, go and tell the dumb folk to believe this, and they will. So while it shows that there may have been some type of charitable work and outlook for your fellow man towards the poor and everyone that came from the Roman society and the Roman pagan priests, it wasn't necessarily towards everybody in the same way that the Christian church was. So as Christians were outdoing the Romans by taking care of everybody and anyone who came by them, paying no heed to class or race, etc. So even if Christianity didn't originate this, which in one sense it didn't, because the Jews were doing this and still were at the time, and obviously being nice to other people isn't purely a Christian thing, the church definitely raised the bar to a much higher level based on the teachings of Jesus and their outlook in this. There's also some other historians who will say that that Christianity basically revolutionised things for the better. In one of the clear examples, in the rise of hospitals, which took place in the 4th century, which was termed by historians as the second medical revolution of history. And atheist historian Tom Holland, in his recent book Dominion, makes the claim that Christianity impacted Western thinking so much that all the things we consider intrinsic and instinctive human values are really nothing of the sort, because they primarily and fundamentally are the product of Christianity and would not exist in Western society without the last 2,000 years of its influence. So I hope this has been an interesting little historical bit for you, and you can see that Christianity did really raise the bar in morality and out working for the poor and downtrodden society. Obviously you got the rise of hospitals, and later universities was a Christian thing originally for everyone. And there's also the view that, contrary to popular opinion, Christianity actually raised the bar for women's rights and things in history, which from a modern perspective might not seem much looking back, but in contrast to the contemporary society at the time, women had far more rights within the Christian framework than they did in other places of society. But I may save that for another video. So I hope you like this. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, anything else you'd like me to talk about or follow up on, and see you next time.